So after we recorded the podcast last week, I was sitting in the living room and I opened up an app on my phone that had an advertisement in it for a fast food place. And of course, I was doing the beeps, so my phone was at maximum volume. And the phone was like, yo, you want some chicken nuggets, man? We got chicken nuggets. Full volume. And everybody looked at me like, what's going on here, man? Your phone is yelling at you.
This was an app advertisement, to be clear, not like a YouTube advertisement.
This was I think it was probably in Reddit, if I had to guess. So
that seems illegal.
I don't think you should be able to play sounds on people's devices unsolicited. But
well, you know, I think there's a lot of things you shouldn't be able to do with people's devices, and yet somehow they continue.
You know what I do think you should be able to do, Brad?
What's that?
Is eat some absolute garbage food on the Superb Owl Sunday.
Yeah, you know, I don't care much about football, but it does seem like a good excuse for indulgence, decadence, if you will.
Yeah, get a like where do you like to go? What's your starting point? Where do you kick off with? Like, you like a protein? You like a lot of carbs? What's your strategy?
Man, I mean, it varies by event.
Okay,
you know, like if it's Christmas, I mean, obviously this is not Christmas.
No,
but like the holidays, it's like sausage balls and things of that nature. Like
I like a sausage ball. I'll eat a sausage ball
for a football game. I don't know. It's a different category of stuff, you know. Football game, it's like chips and dip. It's like bad. It's worse stuff. I don't know. Buffalo wings.
Well, okay. So I guess the question is, if you're doing a spread for a football game, do you put plates? Like, is it a drive-by? You just grab something and jam it in your face, or are you like putting a little plate next to there so you can make like a little spread and then take it back to your seat to watch the game?
Yeah, I think it's proper to always have a little plate, even if you don't need it.
Oh, you and I are different people, turns out.
I say plate's optional is what I'm going to say. It's like, okay, hey, if you just want to drive by, dip a chip and go for it. If you want a plate to catch the crumbs or whatever, I won't argue. Okay,
like in a crumb, if you're eating something that has crumbs, or like, I guess if you're doing a dip, you have like a 7-layer dip there. You want to get a big spoonful of that and slop it down on your plate.
Oh, 7-layer dip is...
What are your 7 layers? It's like guac and refried beans, sour cream, probably cheese. Some sort of cheese mix.
Lettuce and tomato. Does that count as 1 or 2 layers?
I think that's each a layer. That's 6. And then maybe olives.
Yes, olives.
We'd say sour cream. Yeah,
man, maybe I should. So yeah, I'm sitting here trying to think what I'm going to be solo. Unless I swing by your house. I'm not sure yet.
I'm saying make a 7-layer dip. And then that's like 2-3 meals right there.
That's true. I don't know. Did you guys ever do the Rotel tomato dip?
Are you kidding me? Yes.
Okay.
You mean you take a half a slab of Velveeta and a can of Rotel and put it in the microwave oven for 4 minutes?
It's the easiest thing you can possibly make for a party situation.
There's an amount of that you should stop at. Like that's one of those things. Once it becomes clear that it is not real food about midway through a bowl of that.
So that's my quandary. If I'm going to be by myself and I make an entire serving, like an entire dish of that, something bad might happen.
Look, that is no one man should consume in one entire serving. And then also you're going to have a half a slab of Velveeta left over too, which is, it's no longer shelf stable once you open the foil.
Wait, is that actually true?
The Velveeta is not in the chilled section of the grocery store, Brad. It's ultra pasteurized.
This is how you know I've never had to buy Velveeta before.
So I was thinking like a 7 layer is pretty good though, because you got some like protein in the refried beans. Maybe put some black beans on top if you want to go for an unprecedented 8th layer. You got dairy. You got a vegetable somewhere in there with some guac and lettuce.
Man, you know what? You might be on something. I was thinking just buy a giant bag of tortilla chips, make the Rotel Velveeta thing, and maybe make some fresh guacamole to go between back and forth. You know, not all Velveeta, cut it with some healthy fats.
Yeah.
But the 7-layer might trump all of that, actually. So
I've got some wild cards for you. One is that you can do wings in the oven real easy if you dry them off all the way, and then do salt and a little bit of baking powder on the outside. It'll crisp them up real good in like an oven. You want them to be super dry. There's a Serious Eats recipe for those. It's good, but cut the salt on that is my advice. The other one is a Lucky Peach recipe from way back where they're like, just go buy a couple of bags of the cheapest shrimp ramen that they have at your grocery store, and then throw out the noodles and take the packets and put them in a quart of sour cream and stir it up and let it sit overnight. And it turns into like a French onion dip, but it's like shrimp ramen dip. And it is that and some Ruffles is unbelievable.
That is the most collegiate food recipe strategy I have ever heard.
So I was skeptical of this. I made a batch when we went camping with the kiddos' school friends last summer, and everybody was like, "What is this?" I was like, "It's shrimp dip. Just try it. It's pretty remarkable." And everybody's like, "I don't know, shrimp dip." Yeah. And then like 45 minutes later, the entire quart of sour cream was gone. It was like vultures had descended on that stuff.
That sounds dangerous. Speaking of things that are not entirely food.
Welcome to Brad and Will Made a Tech Pod. I'm Will.
I'm Brad. Hello.
Doing this before we eat lunch is dangerous.
Yes.
I'm hungry.
Is it?
I just ate a hot dog and I'm hungry again because of all the dip talk.
This is how you solve this problem. You just stop eating. I mean, okay, I'm being a little flip. Don't stop eating. But that, frankly, is half the reason I started fasting was, man, I don't have time to eat until like 2 or 3 o'clock every day anyway. I might as well just make this a formal declaration.
I'm much more into slowing, it turns out. But yeah, it's time for the Super Bowl. I didn't even look at TV sales this year. Usually I look at TV sales around Super Bowl because that's a good time for that.
Yeah, sure.
A friend of the show recently bought a ridiculously oversized TV.
Oh, how oversized are we talking?
100 inches.
Wow. And
when he told us what it cost, it was less than I paid for my Panasonic like 10 years ago.
No kidding.
Yeah, I was shocked.
TVs have gotten pretty cheap, I have to say.
Yeah, I don't have a wall large enough for a 100-inch TV, though, I don't think.
I'm trying to think, your living room, how big's yours now? 65?
65.
I've decided 65 is kind of a sweet spot.
65 is pretty good. Norm has a 77, I think, which is substantial enough, but he also has high ceilings, so it makes a difference.
Yes.
If you have 8-foot ceiling, 65 seems like pretty much. I don't think I'd want to go much bigger.
Yeah, I got to tell you, I have become violently HDR pilled.
Oh, really?
Like, I know we've talked about it before. You don't know what you're missing. I thought I knew what I was missing. I did not.
Have you turned it on the PC now? Are you playing video games on the PC with the HDR on?
Not as yet.
Okay.
I've been trying to finish that Final Fantasy VII remake. Boy, is there some bright ass stuff in that game.
Oh, I didn't play that with HDR on because I streamed it.
It looks really good.
Huh. How far in are you?
Chapter 8 or 9 currently. I've still got a ways to go.
Are you doing all the side stuff with the VR missions and all that stuff? I don't think they're called VR missions, but
this is a nearly 3-year-old playthrough, and I have been doing all the side stuff when I dropped it 2.5 years ago.
Oh, so you just picked it back up. You didn't start at the beginning.
No. I picked up my very old save and just got back into it. So I might skip side stuff in the interest of just getting through it.
Couple of those final VR things are pretty hard.
Yeah.
It's a good game. I really enjoyed it. Having never played those before, I was enthralled.
Yes.
But we're not here to talk about Final Fantasy today, Brad. We are here to talk about the ultimate VR mission.
Yes, we're here to talk about the Final Fantasy.
Yeah, it's the spatial computing revolution. It's here, it's now. Mm-hmm. And with us to talk about it is tested.com and youtube.com/testedcoms, Norman Chan, VR aficionado, AR expert, and just all around swell guy. Welcome to the show, Norm. Okay, Norm, you're the first Vision Pro person, bro. I know.
Vision Bro.
Vision Bro.
Nice.
Is that how do you feel about that? Do you feel like that's an epithet, or you feel like it's a badge of honor at this point?
I don't know. I don't know how I felt about that. I mean, I feel like how I felt when I first bought the iPhone. That's how this all feels right now.
Okay.
The energy within me, the energy in the community. There wasn't any Reddit back then, really. I guess there was a little bit of Reddit.
Dig. Reddit was Dig back then. Still.
But Dig didn't really have a community. But the internet feels like the energy of 2007, except we're all a little bit older.
A little bit.
Did you buy a launch iPhone?
I did buy a launch iPhone, and I did exactly the same thing where I didn't pre-order. We were working together, Will. So we were at Maximum PC. I was really on Windows, not Windows Mobile. It was CE back then.
No, it was Windows Mobile by then. It would have been.
It was post Pocket PC. But anyway, HTC had their phone with the keypad, the keyboard, and there you could do web browsing on that one. I was like, oh, that's the one I want. And then iPhone came out, and literally, I think the second day, I went to an AT&T store and got a family hookup to spend the $500 to buy the phone. And I don't think I even had like my own like real phone account. I had to like switch AT&T accounts to even pay for data and get on Edge network. But it all feels like that, and that is very exciting. There's a lot of new discovery, a lot of discussion, but you could the entirety of this new interface, this new form of computing, this new form of entertainment, I felt like I could encompass it all in my brain. I could survey the entire landscape, and I could follow along before the world, before the hockey stick moment, before a billion apps, before a billion websites, like what everyone is discovering now with the headset, with every day, what the community's learning about it, with every new app that's coming out. I feel like I could actually fit that all into my brain, which is cool.
Let me ask real fast, not to put the cart before the horse here. Are you suggesting this thing is going to be as transformational as the iPhone was, or are you just saying, hey,
No. I'm just saying it's different enough and it's exciting enough that and the people who've bought into it are engaged with it enough, and there are new enough things to discover with it that in this moment, literally 1 week after it's released, the people who have it are still very much in that honeymoon phase with it.
Like, are you still? So I'm putting the cart way ahead of the horse here, but actually, let's go back because the iPhone's an interesting place. Remember, the iPhone launched with no apps, right? The only apps, like your apps, were save this web page as an icon on your home screen, and that was how you access. That was their whole pitch. You're not going to need apps. You have the full web on this thing, and then of course they destroyed the web over the next 20, 15 years. So I guess two questions. Which thing that we love and is good for humanity is this going to destroy? And do you feel like there's a hole? Like, do you feel like there's some hole in it that is like, are they going to ship a version next year with controllers? Because they're like, we can't. It turns out you need controllers for a 3D headset if you want to be able to do a lot of the stuff that people want to do.
Yeah, the biggest hole in it right now, and they've built in some of the back end to support this, is for more communal things to do. SharePlay is the protocol that they have where people can, if the app support it, they can collaborate, they can have their personas, their avatars in whether it's in the FaceTime windows or some, without the frame border, but floating in your virtual space so that you can collectively sync, watching a movie, which you can do today, but
you can do that on the iPad and the Apple TV or whatever, yes. Right? Yeah,
but you can't do that in a spatial way, right? When you do an iPad, you're going to find boxes in the frame of your iPad, boxes in the frame of your phone. Here, it's personas in rectangles and squares in theoretically the endless space of your home or whatever environment you might be in.
Oh, okay. So like if you watch a movie and you SharePlay with two other people who have headsets.
Yes.
Are like your little heads sitting, or everybody's head sitting in chairs in like a theater and their boxes are just floating there? It's like, no,
right now they're floating where you put them. Okay. So the sound of where that person is coming from is positionally, is calculated and is positioned where you put their little window. Okay. But the protocol does allow for, I think, a few different collaborative like defaults where you could have, like an auditorium setting where the windows are everyone's kind of in a semicircle looking at a shared thing. That's kind of, I guess, the theater equivalent. Yeah. Or it could be in a circle around an object, right? Around, if you have a Jigspace is an application where you can do like exploded diagrams of 3D models. And that's a perfect one where they're going to implement SharePlay, and people wearing headsets theoretically would be
gather
around the yeah, exactly. And they would be loading the same 3D model, and the model is synced to the back end. So one person manipulating that model would be sending the data for then that model to be similarly in real time, or as close to real time, manipulated back on that end. And not being video is important, which it's also. Yeah.
Oh yeah. Well, we'll talk about that. We were going to say that's the good stuff. We're saving that for a minute. Is there like an MCP or Emperor mode where you can make like one person's head really, really huge and everybody else's are tiny, or is that like a per?
No. And honestly, you can make you can grow those windows, those persona windows, as big as, I guess there is a large cap to it, but you can like shrink and grow the other people's windows to different sizes and position them in different places. Relatively speaking, like if I move, your window to the right of me, yes, your audio is coming into my right ear, but it doesn't change my audio in your virtual space.
Got it.
The only thing it might change is the camera angle from that you see in your view of me. But the audio that you would hear from me is still locked to where you put that window. So there's a little bit of asymmetricality in terms of the audio positioning. So you got to kind of figure out, where it is. Everyone is relative to each other.
Yeah.
But the camera angles, you got to think of those little FaceTime windows as like, that's where the selfie cam is.
So no Mystery Science Theater mode for communal movie watching just yet. Not yet.
And I'm sure there'll be applications. Again, like this is it's so close to whether it's the iPhone launch moment or the iPad. And honestly, the more I think about it, it feels more like the iPad moment, because so much of what I'm doing in this headset seems to be replacing things I would have been doing with the iPad more than the iPhone. Watching movies, browsing the web, the kind of, or even using it as a display for a MacBook, right? Like that's a thing that you can do with the iPad. But it's having, as opposed to one iPad in front of you, it's having as many iPad instances in front of you. And yes, iPad has some form of multitasking, but this is actually instances of those applications running in real time. And I would say one last thing is, remember when the iPad launched, they also bootstrap. It was iOS, and they bootstrap a bunch of the ability to run iPhone applications on iPad in that small little scale window they could blow up. So in that sense, that reminds me a lot of how you can pull iPad apps into Vision OS.
That's what I was going to say. Is it seems like you can run the old apps in a slightly janky but still fully workable way is the difference in functionality between this and the iPhone and the iPad launch. Okay, so the one thing I was surprised about by this is it seems like almost everybody who's gotten them that I've seen write accounts of like their process, whether they did the mail order or the pickup in store, has ended up like you end up in the store no matter what. It sounds like.
I don't know. It's probably not ideal for Apple's perspective. No, you can't really scale that, right?
I'd say they probably want to work that out. Yeah.
Yeah. And then the reason you have to do that is because it's the fit is so important.
Yeah.
It's not one size fit all. And what Apple's doing, if people don't know, if you buy a Quest headset, there are basically two options by default in terms of what touches. Depth actually, or I guess. For the facial interface, actually, I've lost track. They used to have different face interfaces, which is the plastic part with the cushion that touches your face that connects to the headset. There are ones that accommodate glasses with the previous Oculus headsets. The new one, the Quest 3, the default facial interface, you can slide it in and out, give yourself some extra eye relief, and you can change out the pads. And there have been this whole cottage industry of third-party companies like VR Cover making their own interfaces that are maybe softer, more cushier, to better conform against
sweat resistant.
Yeah, exactly. But none of those have dramatic actual geometry differences, like structural differences, shape differences for all the different shapes that people have because of how big their forehead might be, or how high their chins or their cheeks are, the cheekbones are. Because primarily you're talking about where this headset rests relative to your forehead, to your cheeks, and the kind of the side of your eyes as well. Those are the primary pressure points. On the kind of highly customizable end, there's Big Screen Beyond, which is the PC Steam VR based headset, and they do a fully customized facial interface, which uses an iPhone scan as well.
Your face? Oh, okay.
Like you have to go use a web applet, and it uses an iPhone. You have to use an iPhone which has the front-facing camera with the LiDAR, the Face ID sensor, and you scan your face. You send them that scan, and they actually have a custom manufacturing process that mills a silicone face interface.
Wow.
So it is perfect light seal. It has every single contour. But they are manufacturing those, one at a time for every user, and that can scale to only as much as their capacity to scale. It's not like a It's not necessarily a 200,000 units on day one type thing.
Yeah.
What Apple's done is in the middle. So you do have to scan your face when you decide to purchase this. So whether you're going to a store or you've done the order online, in order to put an order through, you have to scan your face. You can do it multiple times. And it's a matter of like looking up, down, left, right, like twice. And then based on that geometry, they put you in one of 28 different fits. So they have 28 different SKUs of what they call the light seal. And it's really 14 different shapes with a narrow and wide option. So 14 times 2. But it's not just like sizes. It's not like smallest, size 1 and 14 is the largest, and then a narrow and a wide option. It's actually different contours based on how they touch your cheek.
I was going to say, the interesting thing about this is Apple's one of the few companies in the world that's actually big enough to look at the whole spectrum of humanity and say, okay, we can this is the smallest number of pieces that we can break the shape of faces down into, right?
The smallest that also can scale, right? I'm sure you could even more granular because they're not accommodating for like nose sizes. Because the nose sizes, the way the face interface touches, the light seal touches your nose, is that it's just a piece of cloth. So theoretically, you could have those 28 different sizes for face shapes, plus times however many different nose sizes. They've chose something that's manageable from a supply chain and like distribution standpoint. But to go back to your original question, why it sounds like everyone's going to the store is that from my experience, the fit has been right. Like Jeremy got his, he fitted his, he was like a 21W, I'm a 23W because mine has lens inserts, and people have kind of deciphered what those things mean. They do differ in terms of the depth, in terms of how far your eyes are away from the optics, because they give you, there is a model that gives you a little bit of extra depth to accommodate for the Zeiss lens inserts.
Yeah.
Some people don't want that depth because they want the widest field of view. And so they will try to override what Apple is recommending for their face by going to the store and saying, I know you told me this thing is the best fit for me and it maybe fits well, but I want to be as close to the lenses as possible. So please give me the survey of give me the 5 options I can try in the store. And if you set up an appointment for this, and they will literally bring out a cart with 5 different facial interfaces and let you sit there for as long as you want, at least in this opening week and the opening weekend, as long as you want, and try the different fits, try the different cushions. It's very much like a concierge buying a new fancy car experience. And then if you're happy, you pick the one you want. You have 2 weeks to exchange the one that came with your headset. And then you take home the one that hopefully is the best fit for you.
Can you buy additional gaskets now?
Yes.
If you have like another family member or something you want, Yeah.
So that's $200. And they'll let you scan. Yeah, I know. Yeah. I'll tell you, it's for a $3,500 base price headset that's the 256 gigs. There's $200 for capacity. So up to 512, and then up to a terabyte, it's $400 extra for a terabyte. So almost $4,000 before tax. And then if you want new light seals, $200 each. If you want new head straps, that nice knitted head strap, that's $100. And then new, just the light seal cushions, I believe, are like $20.
Yeah, so it's worth mentioning on the light seal. There's 2 parts to this thing. There's the cushion part, which is what I was expecting from like using Vives and Rifts and all that stuff over the years, and then that's the padded thing it magnets onto. The light seal is like it looks like the side of the headset. Basically, it's like the part that comes out of the front of the headset, where the headset is flat, and then goes back to where it hits your face. So it's
like a shroud, basically.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's the thing that makes the headset look thick.
Yeah.
It's this mesh thing. It's like the tunnel that you're looking through that, connects your, the thing that's your face. It's hard to explain in an audio podcast.
It's the thing that makes it not a pair of glasses and makes it a pair of goggles, right? It's the thing that closes off the outside world on your peripherals.
Yeah.
And that whole thing removes, which I didn't understand that from anything that we'd seen until. So full disclosure, I went over to Norm's house on Monday and spent an hour in the headset. Thank you for letting me do that, by the way, Norm. I appreciate it.
No problem.
I gooing up your headset for you. The straps feel really good. That the one that looks like a pair of Nikes felt really good. I was really surprised.
So that's the Space Age looks like a piece of NASA equipment one, the ridged one.
Yeah, it has ridges, and it's So the headset does include 2 straps. What they showed last year was this knitted head strap, which is, to their credit, a lot better than any of the bundled straps that come with the Oculus headsets. The Oculus headsets come with, 2 pieces of like an inch and a half, wide of strapping that look like
elastic
straps. Exactly, elastic straps with the top strap and Velcro on, and they're serviceable. But anyone buying a Quest, I would highly recommend them looking to a third-party strap or a rigid strap. Like the I guess what they call the Elite strap, which is sell for like $70. What Apple decided to do is they did not want to go with a rigid strap. They did not want hard plastic. And I think they really know that people are going to want to watch movies on this. And they want people to be able to lay the back of their head on a chair or on a couch comfortably. So they could have gone with just your standard, your jock strap type material, but they went with something that widens in the back or is wider in the back that kind of cups the back of your head more. And so, while it may be just like an inch and a quarter or inch and a half at the point where it connects to the side bands, by the time it gets to the back of your head, it's like 2.5, 3 inches, and it does mesh out. And they have 2 strings essentially on the top and bottom that then tighten and loosen with a knob on the side, and that tightening process is super easy and comfortable. I've been really enjoying that.
It's it breathes. The material they used feels like a Flyknit type material for a shoe too. So it didn't, like, at no point, even though there was a lot of coverage on the back of my head, did the back of my head start feeling sweaty or anything. It just you just forgot it was there after a minute.
And it accordions, right? Like when you get to the small size, it bunches up in just the right way. It loosens up in just the right way. So you get a lot of and there's 3 sizes of that one too. It comes in small, medium, large. But it's still a soft strap. And because you don't have this rigid, you don't have a rigid or a counterweight, and you don't have a rigid strap to help support the weight of the headset that's in front of you, and it's a relatively heavy headset, even with the battery being outside of it, a lot of that glass and aluminum and display weight just droops down in your face. And even if you have the best fit for the light seal and you have the perfect fit for the back strap, it is a hard thing to use for more than an hour at a time if you are just looking forward and not reclining. So, I find it much easier to use. So
it's funny, I was going to ask that. Since I was using yours with your face seal, which I had received, the machine told me I needed a different size face seal than you had, which is fine. But I was curious what the if the comfort is better with the ideally properly fitting face seal, and it sounds like at the end of an hour, I was pretty good, it turns out.
And the thing that helps the most is having some type of top strap support. And so the second thing they included, which from what I understand was a later addition, maybe something that they decided after the WWDC reception, is kind of like your jock strap equivalent, which is a band that goes in the back of the head and the band that goes in the top of the head. It's Velcro to tighten. It doesn't have any of that fancy knit material. It doesn't have your fancy knob to tighten, but it's like, okay, you guys wanted a top strap. Here's what we'll include in the package for you. It's not actually what they teased last year, which is a top strap that you could attach to the back knit version, which is what I wanted and what I've kind of cobbled together using like a third-party top strap I have here.
Yeah. So I was going to say this sounds goofy, but the knob that's on that default strap, it feels really good. Like it's like, I don't know if you remember when you first used the PSVR, but you first used the PSVR and you're like, oh, I just put this on and then I turn the thing, and then it's like, I don't have to do there's no Velcroing. I'm not Velcroing my hair into this band. Like it's not a take it off, adjust it, put it back on kind of situation. You just put it on your face and you twist the knob until your head squeezed a comfortable amount, and then you're good to go. And that goes a long way. Have you used the 2-strap, the jock strap looking thing?
Yeah. And it's better, it's better than the default by itself. What people have actually hacked together is they've spent the extra $100 on getting another knit back strap and then 3D printed an attachment so you can click that and use a second knit one with its own dial as the top strap. So that's
your whole head is just ensconced.
ensconced in these, in your Nike knit looking like straps. And we've gone like 30 minutes just talking about the fit of this. And there's, I know there's a lot to talk about.
Okay. So the last thing is I'm waiting for somebody to just put it in a motorcycle helmet where it's just like jammed on your face in a motorcycle helmet. And that's all you have.
I'll tell you the hacks that people have come up with so far. Some people have taken off their light seals completely and they want to operate it with like light coming in from the side so they can get the headset just as close to their eyelashes and eyeballs as possible. It works if you kind of attach it with like a rubber band or clip it to like a baseball cap. And so you're basically, the weight is on the baseball cap and it's almost like a visor that hangs off of the lid, the brim. And I've yet to try that, but there will be a whole ecosystem of third-party accessories and third-party straps to make it more comfortable. There have to be.
Well, and the way it mounts and removes the straps is pretty fast. Okay, let's we got some stuff here.
Actually, if this is the last time we're going to talk about fit, I got one fit question.
Yes.
Before we move on, how does it rest on your nose? I mean, obviously that's going to be dependent on which strap you're using, like what fitting you got at the store and everything. But like I have found, I don't know if people experience this a lot. I found in using VR headsets, I've got some, I don't know if there's a name for this phobia of having your nostrils pinched too much to where
there's no weight on your nose.
None by design.
Okay. No weight. The weight is all either on your forehead or chin mostly, because the way it touches your nose is just cheekbones. Yeah, sorry, cheekbones. Right. The way it touches, the way it covers your nose is with a piece of fabric, and it's a pretty wide piece of fabric. They're not accommodating for all nose sizes with a perfect fit. It's just fabric that rests there.
Okay. And the gap for the nose is big. Like the place it touched on my cheekbones, it's like under my pupils, not inside close. Like it didn't. I didn't get any pressure on my sinuses even with the bad fit, which was unusual for headsets.
Okay.
Let's talk about like when you first put the headset on, the thing that struck me was the pass-through, and I wasn't expecting both the latency is basically non-existent. It feels like, which is new for video. That's not something we've typically optimized for on video processing chips. And like it handled things like we were standing in your living room. There's a big giant window looking outside. It was a sunny day. It didn't have any problems dealing with me looking out the window. It didn't have any problems with me switching to the dark part of the room. I was really pleasantly surprised by I don't imagine myself walking down the street with one of these things on ever, but I can understand why people would be like, oh yeah, you can totally do this after putting it on and having that kind of first experience.
That's something they absolutely prioritized. This is a pass-through first device. As much as on the hardware side, it is a VR headset. The VR aspect of it, meaning putting you in environments and locations and games, is secondary to putting you in whatever real space you're in through video, of course, stereo video, reprojected video, and then letting you place virtual objects, window panes.
But I mean, they're handling that stereo video and the de-warping and the occlusion and all that stuff, frankly, better than anything I've ever used. Like I haven't spent a lot of time with Quest 3, but other than that, the headsets that tried to do occlusion kind of muffed it. And in this case, like when you put your hand through something, your hand intersects it at what feels like the right spot when you're putting your hand through a virtual object, stuff like that. And it has this like nice shimmery edge to it when you put it through it.
So it does it better, and we'll use Quest 3 as an example because the Quest 3 is also a pass-through first headset where, by default, when you put it on, you have color stereo vision that's reprojected. It's a perfect, at least spatial recreation of what's in your space. Like if you take the headset off, where an object is exactly where it would be. The fidelity in color is the difference. So the difference in the Apple Vision Pro is one, high resolution. So things are just sharper and clearer, not as sharp and clear as you really want,
On the camera or the screen?
The camera. Okay. Both, absolutely. But I'm just talking about the difference in the pass-through. What allows it to be better is high resolution cameras for video input. They have a custom chip, the R1, that allows for the lowest latency, at 90 hertz. So I think if the video is coming through at 90 frames a second, it's extremely responsive. Waving your hand in front of you, your hand is moving as fast. There's no lag between when you feel like you're moving your hand and what the movement of your hand looks like through the headset. Other thing they're doing is the the correction of the stereo optics is just better. One of the big problem with pass-through video in mixed reality is the placement of the cameras that you use, aren't where your eyeballs are. You need them really to be where your eyeballs are. They're projected, they're forward, right? Because that's just the physical design of the headset. And so they have to do a bunch of calculation to warp the image and basically reproject it to make it look like where your eyeballs are. So everything is stereo correct. And the Quest does a decent job of it, but where it really fails is in the near field, stuff that's kind of up close to you. And that's why when you wear a Quest, when you hold a phone up for you, you see all the kind of warping of that phone. There's none of that here. They really have nailed perfectly the reprojected images coming in to have it fit where it thinks your eyes are. And then the last thing is that occlusion, where it's the only system that has built-in system-wide, you can't turn it off, recognition of your hands, your arms, and up to your shoulders, really. And it's doing in a computer vision way. It's, of course, doing skeletal modeling for interaction stuff. But like Will said, it's drawing a stenciled outline, refreshing at 90 frames a second again, of your two hands, so that regardless of what environment you may be in, what virtual objects you may have, when you put your hand up, you will always see video pass through of your hands on top of the objects.
Well, and it's exactly where your sense of proprioception detects the hand. So like that's like when you get close with the Quest or with these other headsets, then your hand either gets really, really big or really, really tiny, depending on how they're doing the warping. And it didn't, like, it was bonkers how well that worked. How does the camera do in low light, Norm? Not great.
Okay. Like, it still tracks in low light because it's doing IR emitters for the SLAM tracking. But you can tell, I mean, it does exposure, like you said, like it has some, like, I think a little bit of HDR built in that it is the tone mapping of the image that's coming through is balancing all the exposure levels in your environments. And so it does do exposure shift. If you look outside a bright window, it very quickly, but very noticeably will shift so you can look at what's outside. It's not perfect HDR where, I mean, it kind of adjusts as if your eyes would be adjusting. So you can look outside, but outside of like a normal lit room, with like lights, you do see noise. You don't see increased like judder or smearing in low light. The smearing is just there all the time also, but that may be more a result of the OLED panels they have and how bright they set those OLED panels. As a consequence, the persistence of those pixels lasts a little longer.
Do you have any control at all over the pass-through exposure, or is it entirely handled by the headset? Okay.
Entirely automatic.
Yeah. Okay. Like I watched, I think it was Casey Neistat's video where he had a lot of like, here's what I'm seeing, and then a shot somebody else was shooting of him out externally. And the external video was so much brighter than what he was seeing inside. And so I guess that's just the headset thinks it should be.
Yep. And while there is a brightness setting, like it's, the pass-through brightness never gets that bright. That's just a limitation of how bright those panels are through the pancake lenses, which takes away, orders of magnitudes of brightness. But the content, the virtual content, I find it pretty bright, like for movies and it's, the virtual content looks fantastic.
Well, and because the light seals do a good job of blocking out the outside light, your eye adjusts to whatever the norm that the headset presents is. So like it feels, at no point did it feel dim inside the headset. Let's see. Did they do the foveated rendering on the video too, or is it just on the other stuff?
Yeah, and that's tied to the resolution of this, right? So while the first thing people may notice is that's passed through and it's immediately responsive, and people who may not have never used VR before may feel like this should be the baseline, and going forward, this feels like it should be the baseline of pass through quality. What people aren't thinking about, first-time VR users, is just how sharp these panels are. Like they're taking for granted that we've had over 10 years of VR without panels anywhere near as high resolution as what they put on here. And I think a lot of the cost and expense of this headset goes into this display system. iFixit has taken it apart. So I think they've identified that these are Sony micro OLEDs that are about, like 1.4 inches. And they looked at, with the microscope, the individual pixels and calculated roughly, I think I want to say a 35 ppd and the pixel dimensions being roughly 3,600 pixels by like 3,400 pixels.
That's crazy.
And they've tied that to going to CES and what Sony and other like display manufacturers like BOE have showed. Like they've kind of narrowed in on what the supply chain looks like or what Apple may have sourced. It may not be the exact thing because they always have special relationships with display manufacturers, so maybe like a variant of something. But Sony also makes these micro OLEDs or equivalents of available to other partners at extreme cost. And I don't know what the budget is. As a comparison, Big Screen Beyond, which is that PC VR headset, also uses micro OLED panels, has a per eye resolution of 2560 by 2560, which I found best in class for PC VR, like playing any PC VR game, watching movies. Quest 3 is like 2100 by 2100 equivalent. And so this is like, many millions of more pixels per eye. And the difference is so noticeable. Like, and because they have much more graphical horsepower on this, I think they're super sampling. And so there's even with like on Windows where you might see anti-aliasing, like I do a pretty good job of trying to pixel peep and trying to spot like the jaggies. You can barely notice some. The most you can notice is some of the anti-aliasing.
I was really shocked. Like I was able to look at my phone through the pass-through and see the phone screen fine. But when I was looking at Windows rendered by the device, like there was no, like you could rest your eyeballs on them in the spatial computing area of the thing, and you couldn't see. There was no way to see pixels. You couldn't see pixels at all. Yeah. The only place the pixels showed up was in video, and that was a side effect of compression, I think, probably rather than anything else.
I think the places to look are like rectangles and like hard edge rectangles, because even like the horizon line, if you turn your head, the headset has to compensate for that. It's no longer really aligning with, the horizontal lines of the display panels. And if an application doesn't have super sampling or doesn't really put in anti-aliasing, they can start to see that kind of like shimmering rope effect at the edge. But they do such a good job that you're not noticing anything remotely what you could call screen door. And pixel fill is complete. I mean, it's not human eye resolution, like the PPD of what a human eye can detect, which is like upward in the 80 or 90 PPD. But anywhere in this past like 30, 35, it's well and good enough for reading and certainly for any type of visual media.
How do you interact with this thing? There's no controller, right? So there's a couple of buttons on the headset, and then there's gestures, basically.
It's also no controllers, and that was like one of those other big, like controversial decisions they made, because we're so used to in traditional VR having motion controls that allow for the abstraction of complex actions.
Look, Norm, it's like a phone without buttons, a physical keyboard. Why would you want that?
That's the analogy. So the quote unquote magic, the thing they've worked really hard at is eye tracking on this. Eye tracking and the hand modeling and pairing those into this multimodal interface. So as opposed to eye tracking just being used for foveate rendering, and foveate rendering is there to answer your question in the captured video that you can capture in the headset. You absolutely notice this box of sharpness that's moving across as you dart your eyes across. It's very fast. There's a ton of eye trackers, eye trackers in here.
The foveated rendering, for people who don't know, is the center of your retina has a denser image resolution than the rest of the eyeball. So if you can track the eye movement, then you know where people are looking. And if you know that, then you can only render high resolution in the area that's directly where that sweet spot of your eyeball is. And they do such a good job with that. I didn't even realize it was doing like sometimes when you do foveated rendering, sometimes you see the edges of that and stuff like that, if the eye tracking is slow or lags or whatever. And I got none of that. I don't know about you, Norm.
Yeah, and PSVR 2 has foveate rendering. It's really interesting because you would hear John Carmack and Michael Abrash kind of downplay foveate rendering a little bit in past Meta Connect or Oculus Connect conferences, saying that back then 3-4 years ago in their foveate rendering tests, it just wouldn't. You'd either have to expand the render box for it to not be noticeable, in which case you only get like 10-15% performance, or it just wouldn't track fast enough because your eyes are constantly fluttering and doing these micro movements. But both PSVR 2 and Apple Vision Pro really show that fovea rendering has a great effect. I mean, neither of these devices, unless you're really, really looking for it, do you notice it in headset. Like, it's where your eyes are looking at, and it's moving fast enough. Those render adjustments are moving fast enough that, and that box is big enough that the sweet spot is always going to be sharp. Well, that means that they can render things, and they can do super sampling, and they can make the most out of trying to get 90 FPS onto this, something that's essentially running an ARM chip, the laptop ARM chip here, the M2. So eye tracking is really accurate, not perfect, but really accurate. I think better than any like Tobii equivalent eye tracking I've used in the past. You went through a calibration pass, and your input is gaze plus a small micro pinch. You see videos of people putting their hands out and like tapping their hands together. That's completely unnecessary. Like, they've modeled the hands and the cameras looking at your hands have a wide enough field of view that if you rest your hand on your lap as comfortably as like people you do when you're maybe sitting on the couch, just resting on your leg, and just do the smallest tapping of your fingers together, it will know that you've tapped it, and it will be responsive enough. And it's doing prediction, in some cases there, but then correspond that with where you're looking at to then click on links, scroll through windows, move windows, and all your interaction is a combination of eye tracking plus these small taps.
This was the part when I was using it that felt the most it felt new, right? It felt like something completely new, because I was doing things like taking a pinch and then just doing wrist flicks to scroll through a browser window. Now, the place that it broke was that the eye tracking for me, and I only did one calibration pass, which apparently I think if you do more calibration passes, it supposedly improves over time.
I don't know about that. I think new calibration passes I would recommend them if you're not getting satisfactory results, but I don't think they can aggregate. I think they just kind of reset.
The thing I noticed was there were parts of the headset where I was looking where it would not. It would consistently think I was looking just a little bit below where I was looking. So I'd
100%.
Click on the
I've
wrong.
Had that.
Yeah.
Very, very, like, it happens once a day. It's extremely frustrating because there's no mouse cursor.
No, there's no. Your only alternative is to try to look up slightly above the thing that you're trying to track, and turns out shockingly hard to do.
I was reading some forum posts. I guess you can use a magic trackpay with this thing, but it sounds like the integration is pretty jank.
Yeah, so I'll talk about that. By default, they want people to use, like, they really, really want people to love and use this thing they spent so much effort on, which is gaze and tap. And when it works, like browsing a web, it really does feel special. All the kind of care and effort in design and that they've put into it, in terms of like making it feel natural, adding springiness to it, giving the windows a feeling of momentum. Like, this is the stuff that made their implementation of multi-touch feel better than multi-touch that was on other phones, like Android phones, or even like those old capacitive smartphones. It's like there was a speediness or responsiveness to that input that makes their implementation of that just feel really nice. And I think you noticed that well. You're like,
yeah, like when you would look at the grab bar, there's a grab bar in the bottom of most windows. And when you look at it, it kind of highlights, you pinch, and then you move your arm, and you can kind of just like zoom around, and it was shocking, the responsiveness. It felt good. It felt like when I let go of it, it put it where I wanted it to be rather than where it was, which was what you want in that situation.
And so when it feels good, which is most of the time, it's awesome to a point where you're not thinking about it. And you can kind of be lazy. Like, you can kind of be your guy in the chair in Wall-E, just like looking up, web browsers and moving things around. But when it fails, it's so frustrating because you kind of have to strain your eyes to, train them to look where you want to click. And when there's a mismatch between what you're looking at and where it's highlighting, like, that just breaks it completely. So the way to overcome that is direct touch, and something you can do, like if you put up any window, like an iPad window, you can bring it close and you can poke your finger through this virtual plane and use it as like a virtual button. You can actually tap links and you can scroll with your finger. This is something you can do in the Quest, and I actually love the direct touch implementation in the Quest. I love being able to grab the side of a window and kind of move it and place it where I want. They don't have the gaze plus, the pinch input. And so they've done a lot of effort in their hand tracking to make direct touch feel really good. Apple seems to deprioritize direct touch. You can do it, but it's just not their preferred way of letting you interface with the spatial stuff. And if you want to bring a cursor in there, it's trackpad only. They decided to explicitly omit mouse. Bluetooth mouse. You cannot pair. It says no Bluetooth mouse supported. And when you bring a trackpad in there, a Magic Trackpad, $100 Magic Trackpad, you get a very similar, if you're using a mouse on a trackpad on the iPad, like a little circle that floats in the screen. And that circle only activates in the screen that you're looking at. So you can't be looking at one screen and have your trackpad cursor float into the other screen. And they don't retain the spatial relationship. So if you think of like Windows on your desktop computer or your laptop computer, the way we've thought of spatial windows, you might have a windowed element here and a windowed element on the left and windowed element on the right. When you move your cursor between them, your cursor stays free in the operating system, right? You actually have the space between the windows that you kind of navigate through, right? That allows you to click things in the background. The cursor in Vision OS jumps from window to window depending on where you're looking at. So
that makes a lot of sense to me, given how you can place the windows in space, right? We haven't talked about this yet, but you can it's not like you're just placing the windows in a circle in a sphere on the inside of a sphere around you, right? You can actually place them in 3D space and move around and put them in different places if you want. I don't know what the usability of that is. It seems pretty minor.
It's a little bit both. So if you're seated or standing at a fixed location, the XY orientation of where the windows are kind of locks into the sphere. It doesn't snap in, but it is aligned to an imaginary sphere in front of you, like this curve, a canvas. But you can also then push back. And if you move out of, let's say you arrange 5 windows and you tile them as like this ultra wide screen window in front of you, it's in this curved arrangement. You can then move Z depth back and they're still kind of in this curved arrangement, grow them up, size them down, whatever. But then you can then walk away from that and then open new windows and then set them up and place them in another curved arrangement. None of that saves and none of it snaps to floors or walls or, kind of aligns to flat surfaces that you may have in your real space. So they're all kind of think of it as like having, this kind of virtual desktop environment of these windows that you can place, but really designed to be optimized to be arranged for a stationary position or stationary operating location.
How does it work when you hook it up to a Mac, Norm?
When you open up to a Mac, so it mirrors your Mac one screen, and you can change the resolution on that. You can go up to 5K. I think on it depends on the processing power of their Mac. Like the MacBook Air that we have at the house here, it does Retina resolution. So even though the DPI renders at it's 2560 by 1440 equivalent, it's actually pixel doubling, and so it's actually rendering at 5,000 whatever pixels by 2880. And so you have the option of rendering up to 5,000 whatever it is by 2880. So you get high DPI.
Okay.
But it's only one.
And you can't drag windows out of the desktop or anything like that. They're locked in that one window.
No, but you can. That's actually one place where you can use a mouse, because you can use a mouse on your MacBook. And if you have a mouse, then the mouse actually does operate in that MacBook screen and can move off into other windows.
So, but hold on. So if you have the mouse and keyboard connected to your Mac, then you just use the mouse and keyboard connected to your Mac. If you have a mouse and keyboard connected to your Apple Vision Pro, then can you use those in that Mac too, or do you have to use it?
No.
Oh, that's stupid.
The Mac.
Okay.
Sorry. All right, sorry. Let me rephrase this. You can go one way, but not the other way.
So you can use.
When you have a Mac, if you've mirrored your Mac, you can use the keyboard on your Mac, and you can use the trackpad on your Mac, and that will actually let you type in your Vision OS windows.
Oh, in the whole Vision OS window.
Yes. You can type in every Vision OS application or whatever you call
it. That's convenient.
Right. Yes. And that's the only way you can bring in mouse input, because they're not going to disable mouse input for your Mac. If you are in Vision OS and you pair a keyboard, that keyboard still works. And that keyboard will work in your Mac window and override your Mac keyboard, but you cannot bring a mouse from Vision. You can't, pair a mouse and then use that.
But I mean, does this mean that you can be sitting on your couch upstairs and like log into your MacBook down in the basement and like, open a port down there and have your full Mac desktop going in your couch?
I think so.
Assuming it wakes it up, right?
Yeah. So the answer is yes, because the way I've been pairing it, you open a Mac in front of you and a little connect button pops up on top of the lid. And that's like one of the few instances where it's using computer vision to recognize that the thing in front of you is a MacBook, like the keyboard is a MacBook. And so it's going to float the thing up. It actually only refreshes at 1 frame a second. So it's not like a real time like alignment. And you press connect and it's in the back end. It knows you've signed into both devices with the same Apple ID and you're on the same Wi-Fi and it'll stream. But this also
it doesn't
works.
Prompt you on the MacBook.
Correct. And you can force connect to a MacBook on your network or Mac Studio or Mac Mini that may not have a display or a keyboard, just in going in settings. And so I believe you can remote desktop essentially.
Oh, that's cool.
And use that as you can use remote workstations on your local Wi-Fi.
Okay, so we haven't talked about the thing where you can basically close off the real world around you at all yet. There's like a knob like the one on the Apple Watch that you can spin that turns off the world or turns the world on, basically.
It's they call it the digital crown, right? And it's a knob plus a button. This is actually the only way, the physical way you get the home screen is by pressing that button on the top right. I'll give you one anecdote. I find that annoying because I want a gesture to allow me to get the home screen. Like the gaze plus tap interface is so convenient when it works and so untaxing. Like that I find myself almost frustrated that I have to lift my hand up to press this button to get to the home screen.
Once you fully atrophy and your bones start to shrink, you won't be able to reach it, right?
We're one step closer to escaping this physical form.
And because you can't program gestures and you can't say like, I want 2 taps with my fingers or a tap to the middle finger or a tap to the ring finger as a way to open up the home screen, or you can't customize any of that.
You can't say Siri, open the home screen.
You can say Siri, open the home screen, but that's a lot of syllables.
That's fewer muscles in your face than it would take to raise your arm.
Oh, I don't know, man. It's a lot of muscles in the
list. What we found is an accessibility option. A lot of accessibility options where you can. There's like an array of like 12 different sounds you can make, and tie those sounds to shortcuts. And so I've tied clucking. So I use. Yep.
Oh, wow. And wait, hang on. Are these user definable sounds, or do they tell you what to do?
There's a preset list of like generic sharp sounds like puh or tuh or sh. Exactly. And there's a mode you can practice the sounds, so it can help you learn how to make the best sounds. It's for accessibility.
Sorry, you don't have to train it though. It doesn't make you say like, okay, you need to cluck 10 times so we can learn what your cluck sounds like.
That's right. You just have to train. You just have to cluck the way you cluck to hopefully activate the green light that says, okay, your cluck is accurate to our model of what a cluck sounds like. But I've been pairing cluck to home screen. And so I'm on the couch and Danica's like, why the F are you clucking all day? I'm activating the home. I'm just like, every like 10 seconds, I'm like, and then move my hand, it looks ridiculous. Wow. It sounds ridiculous, but I find it more convenient than pressing the button.
For everyone but you, right?
Thank you for confirming that it's a tongue cluck we're talking about and not a chicken.
Yes. It's and there's a click option and a cluck option, and I honestly don't know the difference. It only recognizes my clucks.
I wonder if there's cultural differences between like a glottal click and a glottal cluck, right? That's where we're anyway. But when you're in the completely invisible mode, when you've closed off the world around you, you're sitting on the moon, you're sitting on the top of Haleakala in Hawaii, you're someplace, you're pooping on the top of Mount Everest is the joke we always made in the early VR days. When people walk up to you and look at you, they just kind of melt into the world in a really disconcerting way. Like I don't really know how to describe that one.
Yeah. Wait, is it doing background removal on them? It has to be, right? Like
it is. Yeah.
How effective is that?
Too effective, actually. And it speaks to Apple really think of this, I think, primarily as a mixed reality device more than a VR device. The virtual environments, which are almost akin to like the watch faces on watchOS, in that you can't upload your own. It's like, this is the selection that Apple has given you, and this is the selection our partners have made. Disney has their own selection. Apple TV has like a theater one. I don't know what that means going forward, if like every app developer can like develop their own, because it's all using like, I think, an ILM based a model system.
It's like 3D models plus a big cube map. Yeah,
exactly. Right. So it's like the best version of photogrammetry that you can have if you didn't actually want to explore the space. It's, remember on the first Vives, one of the Valve guys went through and did a bunch of photogrammetry of like Iceland and Greenland, but you'd be able to teleport between nodes. These virtual environments are just for like the very nearest area around you. So the moon, you get like rendered rocks and landscape within, I want to say maybe like a couple, meters out from you, maybe a dozen meters out from you. And then off the edge of a cliff, then it's all like a cube map with some animation. So like clouds will move in the background of a mountainscape, or there'll be rain coming in, but they're not made to be environments to walk around in. They're stationary environments that kind of let you kind of absorb the ambiance, sound and visual.
They work like the Sero cube maps that Google did, because you do get perspective shifts when you walk around inside that space with the stuff off in the distance that's beyond the 3D rendering range. It's pretty neat, but like normal people look at that and be like, oh yeah, that's fine, whatever.
So my thinking is these environments are more for like comfort. If you want to be isolated by design to zen out, or to work in a more focused space, or to watch your media in a more focused environment, that's the reason to bring them in. They're not for interaction with those spaces. It's like, it's fun to watch a movie on Tatooine, or on the Ventress Tower, or on the top of a mountain, or on the moon. Like, sure, I get that. But they're really cognizant of the fact that by enabling these type of fully immersive and virtual environments, you're locking the viewer off from the world. And that's the reason they have the display on the outside, as well as this then ability for the system to recognize faces and humans that may be approaching you. And on a system-wide level, no matter what immersive environment or video you may be watching, it will override, and a silhouette of them will fade in like a ghostly apparition and be in your field of view as long as you look at them.
Ghostly apparition is it, right? Like when you did it to me, all of a sudden I just saw like Norm's eyes and glasses coming up in my, like, you just kind of literally melted in from the background, just your head. And then your body came in when I looked at you, and we could talk for a minute. It was like I was seeing you from beyond the grave, Norm. It was very disturbing.
This sounds like that Star Trek villain they encounter. There's just a floating pair of eyes and a mouth in space.
Yeah, a little bit like that. And I said it works too well because you can't adjust for how sensitive it is. You can turn it off completely. There's a toggle that you can have it just not show people fade in, but you can't say, I only want people to fade in if they're, like 5 feet from me. And it will recognize people who are across the room who may be just like standing still and looking at you. And they will fade in.
I think it also, like you showed me on a video call of it picking up a 2D, like it seems like if you're out of the 3D range, it'll definitely just pick up on 2D faces like an iPhone would when it's doing like face recognition for focus purposes and stuff like that.
Yeah. So using it in the living room, and we have like the TV running, and Daniel's watching a TV show, it would pick up faces on the TV and fade those faces in.
Yeah.
Even though those are flat faces. And scaled probably incorrectly, right?
Does it work for pets too? Does Ripley get picked up?
No.
So you can still kick the dog when you have the headset on? That's not good.
Yeah. But to go to the front-facing or the world-facing display, that eyesight display, those eyes aren't there the whole time. Those eyes only fade in and show to people in the real world when the system is fading them into you. It's a reciprocal action.
Oh, so if the people can see the eyes, then you can theoretically see the people. But yes. If the eyes aren't there, then you're in your own little world.
Exactly.
Weird.
Yeah, it's like an eye contact acknowledgement.
So I didn't actually spend any time really looking at you with the headset on, but the eyes, the moments that you had it on, the eyes were disturbing at best. Like the eyes are not that eye effect is. It seems like a really expensive thing to put on the headset for pretty limited use. But maybe if you're in a cube farm and like this is just a way to pack people more densely into the cubes, then having the eyes so you can see when people are looking at you is good. I don't know.
I've had mixed experiences with it because almost everyone who doesn't know what it is or maybe unfamiliar with VR headsets, when they've looked at it and the eyes popped in, their first assumption is that those are real eyes, like that it was an optical pass-through. And the longer you scrutinize it, I mean, you can clearly tell that it's rendered video. But the lenticular display they're using, or lenticular layer of film they're using, and the multi-view display, so it does do stereo pairs, so you get a little bit of of depth, and they position the render so it looks receded. It's like the inverse of where the camera position is. The problem of the camera location, the display isn't right on the surface of the headset. It makes the eyes look more receded in. There's a little bit of depth there. So they've done the best they could to make it look convincing. And for the normies out there, it gives a sense of connection. It's weird, but
this still feels like the first thing they're going to drop when they want to make $1,000 version of this, right? Like this is an easy feature to kill.
I would rather they kill this feature than release a version with lower resolution display.
Yeah. Let's see. I didn't notice any jitter at all for Windows. Like once you place something in the world, it's really static in relation to your head, which I thought was really nice.
No drift over time. The windows are like locked solid in place. Their SLAM implementation is incredible.
It is every other headset I've used. When the SLAM desyncs, then you get like the windows move with the desync, and that didn't, like, either this wasn't desyncing at all, or they figured out some software mojo to make it to minimize the impact of that.
Yeah, I think the best example of this, if people want to see it in action, is like the videos that immediately emerged on Twitter on like launch day of people cooking and like placing timers over the different pots for things they were cooking, and then running around the kitchen and coming back to them, and like they are quite stable.
Or windows left in the bathroom, that kind of thing. The places, I've seen two places where it's been tricked, and one is a user who had like a projector projecting, like a real projector in his house, projecting like a video. I think it was an Apple TV screensaver, and the slow movement of the screensaver tricked the headset into thinking it was the world moving, and so he got drift that was locked to the movement of the.
Oh, that's amazing.
The screensaver. So
they're not just using the 3D data from the SLAM; they're also using vision image processing.
That's right. They're also using CV. And this other place was someone with a standing desk, and they activated the standing desk up and down, and the plane, and that might be geometry, the plane of the standing desk moving up and down shifted their windows because they thought that was the floor.
That seems like a feature to me.
Yeah, I mean, maybe, right?
It seems like working as intended. I don't know.
Norm, I think we could talk for another hour or two easily, but we have a bunch of stuff we want to get to. So let's do the speed round here.
Yes.
Does it have a chaperone equivalent?
No. So you don't draw any Guardian. They want this, I mean, in a very Apple way. They have so much confidence in their SLAM that you don't, and also it's not really designed for you to be in fully immersed games or traverse environments where you're walking around. They don't surface any of the Guardian or borders or anything. All they do is give you slow fade-ins when you're getting too close to objects.
But like at the same time, it didn't when you make it fully locked in on like the moon or whatever, I can't remember what that's called, but it didn't, if you stood up and started walking around, it didn't kick you out of that. It didn't say, hey, you're not supposed to be walking around while you have this on. But if when I did get close to like the ottoman or something, it would show me the ottoman with the kind of white shimmery edges like it does when a person walks in, which I thought was pretty cool.
Yep.
My eyes got crazy dry inside the headset over the period of an hour. I was wearing contacts. I didn't have glass inserts, obviously, but yeah. Yeah,
the eye strain is going to be a thing. I mean, you're working your eyes a lot just through this gaze. Like I had to take breaks just because I was, just to either recalibrate, literally actually just rest and then recalibrate the eye tracking. But you're being way more purposeful with where you look. And the fact that they have fans, there's no air that's like blowing through, but there is a fan.
There's air circulating though, right?
Little air circulating. You get a little bit dry.
I'm unclear if it was because I wasn't blinking enough because I was so highly engaged, or if it was air moving through. But it was the first thing I noticed when I took the headset off was, oh wow, my eyes are crazy dry. What's the app situation? It seemed like all the apps that you showed me, with the exception of one or two kind of gamey things, were mostly like just 2D windows that you place in the world. There wasn't a lot of 3D stuff.
Yeah, very few 3D things. They said they launched with 600 apps. I feel like maybe a dozen or 24 of those are actually good. A lot of generic stuff. It feels so much like the earliest of iOS App Store days, where you have a lot of chunk apps, a lot of basic apps that might be features later, but you don't have a complete or a collection of your essential killer apps, your media apps. There's no Netflix, no Spotify, no YouTube, but you can do most basic stuff, but the most powerful thing is going to be the web browser.
Our friend Jeremy Williams said it felt like the first days of it felt like you were exploring a new platform and everybody was figuring out what to use it for, which I think felt right.
Yep.
Is it a standalone app store? I assume they're not just throwing Vision Pro apps into the giant iOS one. I assume the search is limited to just what runs on this.
There's a selector. You search and it will surface only Vision apps, but then if you tab over, then it will show you the iPad compatible ones with the same search string.
And the iPad compatible ones are basically just showing you the iPad aspect ratios,
which you can rotate. Window. You can do landscape, but you can't tilt them. You can't and you can resize them. You can resize them all basically to the size of an iPad. But what I want is be able to use that direct touch, hand tracking interface to hold them and rotate them and pivot them. But all you can do is kind of grow these planes, and you can do multi-touch on them too.
Yeah, it seemed like the placement was always going to be on a plane that was perpendicular to the radius that starts of a sphere that starts at your eyeball.
Right. That sphere of placement.
Yeah. Are there there's no games really, right? There's no Beat Saber or Pistol Whip or anything like that at this point.
And worse than that, the games they have, again, feel very much like an app ecosystem of games, where it's these are the games that are bundled with your operating system. There's Cut the Rope and Jetpack Joyride, which are just rendered 3D versions of looking at a screen. There's your chess game, but most of these actually are Apple Arcade games. I don't know if there's even a way to play these without buying into the Apple Arcade subscription.
I have to assume if you're in a market for a $3,500 headset, the $5 a month subscription probably isn't going to stop you from.
I've never been more compelled to sign up for Apple One than after this headset for exactly that. There's this distortion field where I spent $3,500 on a headset up to $4,000. What is this extra $35 a month that will give me Apple Music, because I don't have Spotify on this, plus Apple TV Plus and Apple News and Apple Arcade? I guess that's worth it.
I was going to say that about the exorbitant pricing of the accessories. Also, it's like $200 for a case is insane. I know. But as a percentage of the cost of this headset,
it's an investment in the future, Brad.
The flip side of that is if you decide not to buy the headset, which would be my recommendation for most normal people, right? That money you would have mentally allocated to buy a headset, you can buy a fuck ton of things. Mm-hmm. It's I didn't buy the Apple headset. Maybe I can buy a new laptop and a new phone.
Fully loaded Mac Studio or whatever,
The thing I like to do when I'm tempted by some new Apple product that I've been burned on in the past is I look at what would have happened if I spent that money on Apple stock at the time. And so, I'll go out and buy $3,500 worth of Apple stock and let you know how it goes in a year. How is it for watching movies, Norm? This is the other.
Incredible. Aside from the fact that you're watching it alone, and share play for movies is kind of limited right now.
Can you share play it to your TV so that you can be sitting in the same room as your loved ones and have the same experience as them, but they get the shit version and you get the good version?
No. Actually, that's a really good question. It's something I have to test. I've only done headset to headset where you can share play and have them load up the same movie application, but
it seems like you guys should be all able to sit in the same room, and you just have the 80-foot iMac screen, and they have the 65-inch Chud TV.
77.
I'm sorry. Apologies.
But as a solo viewing experience, it's the high. It surpasses any media viewing experience on VR, and unless you have unless you have a $100,000 projector, it's gonna be feel brighter than that. It's going to be bigger than any TV, OLED TV that you have in your house. And it supports, HDR and Dolby Vision. And aside from not having that in-person shared experience of watching something, the only downside, that's like the big downside, and maybe some of the streaming service providers not having the best bit rates, like, opening up YouTube TV or YouTube in the Safari browser, you're only going to get capped by, what the encodes are. And Disney's, as their best partner, has done the best encodes of their content, like their 3D movie content.
Yeah, I fired up Endgame and was kind of blown away by it. The other thing that's interesting is, like, there's a fair number of movies, mostly made by Christopher Nolan, that have IMAX for some sequences and traditional film for other sequences, and the aspect ratios change when you're in the theater, kind of without you noticing. Can this handle that? Is this, because like that's a hard thing to do on a normal TV?
So it's a really good point. Like Fallout, a Mission Impossible Fallout's a great example, where there's some scenes that have full IMAX aspect ratio, but just like you would buy the Blu-ray, the 4K Blu-ray, it's basically letterbox until it expands to that aspect ratio, where on a big TV, you'd be like, wow, I'm wasting a bunch of space. I want the entire thing to be, unletterbox. But I don't want pan and scan here, because you can virtually grow the window to any size you want. Kind of, even though the black bars are there, you care less, because, you're getting you're still getting a big cinema experience. There's like an IMAX app.
Yeah. And
IMAX is the best media demo. I mean, it's the 4:3 aspect ratio. You're sitting, whatever, within like 3 presets for seats, but it is filling your entire field of view, tall, high bitrate IMAX quality documentaries.
I was like, I loaded that up and I was blown away. Like, but you had me watch them in a specific order. I think I watched Avatar first, which is IMAX in Disney app. But it has he does weird frame rates with that based on what's happening in the movie. And that felt odd to me. Actually, the frame rates bouncing around felt really weird. The Disney stuff was great. And then the IMAX thing blew the Disney. It felt like I was in space working on the outside of the space station when I loaded up the IMAX app and jumped into that documentary. It was incredible.
I have to ask, I have mostly heard about this in the context of no VR porn on this thing, but people seem mad there is no 3D video player, like a side-by-side video player where you can just like load your own files. Can we just assume that's just an attempt to push you to iTunes and Apple TV Plus, or
you are working with day-old information, my friend?
Oh, has someone already addressed this need?
Players are available. The Vision Pro subreddit has celebrated the release of Moon Player, which allows you to, again, there's no real file transfer because you're not plugging this into a computer. It's everything either through AirDrop or the kind of limited file browser. I think you can connect.
There's a Files app, right? So you can hook that up to all your cloud services.
Yeah, or network share, whatever.
They're network share. You can sign into a network share.
Okay. I guess the main thing I just want to make sure there's like not some technical or insurmountable reason that they couldn't do that. They just didn't ship one.
Correct. They didn't ship one natively, and web browsers, I believe there are toggles that you can toggle to allow for WebXR, which is the way you can run kind of virtual reality applications through a web browser. But those are manual advanced setting toggles.
Yeah. I was really surprised that they've done somebody along the way did parallax work that I've never seen anybody do in a headset video player before. So that when you like typically at a 3D movie, when you tilt your head, you're getting left eye, right eye. When you tilt your head, then your brain gets the wrong signals because your eyes are in the wrong place to get the separation at that point. And they're doing something where they blend the two perspectives or something so that it doesn't feel weird when you do that in this headset, which I've literally never seen anyone do before. So I guess good job, Apple. Are there any video apps that don't work? Like is Max on like Max all your small niche channels? Can you get Paramount, or are there people locking out on the Vision Pro?
I think the only the big opt-outs are Spotify, Netflix. There's iPad equivalents for like Amazon Prime, native for Max, native for Disney. Web browser works for in most cases. You just can't you can't save web applets. It's actually funny because in the Quest 3, I really love, not when I'm not in a full VR game, I love being able to open what's called progressive web apps, which are just web windows that you can create shortcuts to, but you can't create bookmarks, progressive web app bookmarks in Vision OS to have them in your homepage. You have to basically open Safari, go to your bookmarks bar, click a link that opens Netflix, and then and place it there.
How does this compare? How does this compare to the kind of, they look like janky AR glasses that you see advertised on Twitter or Instagram or whatever that are like, hey, watch an 80-inch screen on your plane ride. Like this is obviously this costs 10 times what those do generally.
Yeah.
I assume it's a better experience.
Much better. And most of those at best are 3 degrees of freedom. They don't have full 6-off tracking. And so here, and those are limited field of view, like the X-Real glasses. Here it's field of view comparable to, your Quest. I think it's a little bit less. It really depends on your light seal interface. But it runs standalone. Like my issue with Big Screen Beyond, I love watching movies on that, is that I have to be tethered to my PC or laptop, and also in proximity of my Lighthouse trackers. Here, even though the battery is something that's tethered, I took it on a plane flight yesterday, and it opened up the space of that seat. I wasn't immersed in. I didn't opt to be like hidden away on the moon, right? Or on I was still passing through, looking at my, the other passengers, looking at the flight attendants. But not only do I have the movie I was watching in front of me be a massive movie, but having other windows, just like Safari or even Photos app, just having the ability to have other windows spread out beyond the confines of what would be a very tight physical space of an airplane seat, that allowed my brain to feel less claustrophobic.
Man, that's fascinating. More. Yeah, that's like, if you're using like a laptop in an airplane seat, you're just hunched over this tiny tray.
Yeah, your shoulders are in.
Yeah, like that just has implications for just like posture and stuff like that.
And exactly. And it wasn't like I was even actively using those apps. It was like those are the saved apps I was using the night before, but they popped up, and just having those apps, I can move them around. I felt less claustrophobic.
Did you okay, 2 questions. Did you take the keyboard and the trackpad so you could like do work stuff on it while you were on the plane? Okay.
No, just the finger gestures.
What was the reaction for the people around you? I assume they were curious.
This was like a 6 a.m. flight. No one cared.
Would you use this walking down the street?
No, absolutely not.
Okay.
No. This is like the most public place I would consider using it at this point is on an airplane or an airport, like airport countertop or something. So
like, well, I mean, the nice thing about the airport is you're in a secure place, so you like the likelihood of somebody grabbing it and doing a runner is pretty low, I guess. What's the do you think this is a work device or a recreation device, or is this a thing? The first iPhone had a real specific market, which was people who like new shit and have $600, right? Which was an insane amount of money for a phone at the time. And this feels very much like if I spend a lot of time on international flights and like something that would be an absolute no brainer for me if I was doing a lot of 15-hour flights. And it's kind of hard for me sitting in front of 3 monitors and a desk using a PC most of the time to think, oh yeah, this is worth $3,500. It doesn't replace my MacBook. It doesn't replace my desktop really. It's like, it seems like a real specific niche that it lives in for now.
Yeah. And Apple doesn't want it to replace your MacBook. They want you to buy a MacBook to work with it. It doesn't replace your watch or your phone. You can't make phone calls on it. You can only do FaceTime calls and FaceTime. You can't hand off a received phone call, someone calling you that you could pick up on your iPad. You can't pick that up in Vision Pro.
They'll have to add that though.
Maybe it's a design decision. It feels like as opposed to spending $1,000 on a iPad Pro, I would invest in one of these if I was the type of traveler or someone who liked watching movies a lot on an iPad. Like this feels like the big step up, and they got to get the price down, obviously. So if you're someone who does a lot of international flights or even like 5-hour flights domestically, then you may be in the business where you can get this expensed, or that's kind of what a lot of this is for. And they've even the new 1.1 beta has tools for IT departments to do company deployment. So they know that at this price point, a lot of their customers are going to be businesses where they already maybe had budget set aside for a VR department and to do training or collaboration, and they can sell enough of these. So those people plus Apple enthusiasts to build up a user base for developers to get excited about.
So you think they're going to make another one? You think this is the beginning of a long product line?
I think they're committed enough. They've invested too much in, just ecosystem and engineering resources to not at least try a second rev of this and then also a lower price version.
I know this is just like a crystal ball question. What do you think the cadence might be for updates on this? I mean, I'm sure it's definitely not going to be annual, but like, are we talking like Mac Pro length of time, like 5 to 8? You know what I mean? Or is like are they going to rev it maybe every couple of years? I don't know.
That's the kind of decision everyone who looks to spend a lot of money on an Apple device has to make. Like, am I buying it at the front or the tail end of a product cycle? And for a first gen device, how many people got burned, with, what was it, probably like iPhone? They got burned a little bit, right?
iPhone.
Watch for sure. Every first gen device has gotten burned. But in terms of like how longevity, because of the price point of this, I really don't see them launching at least the equivalent of the Pro model equivalent until end of 2025. Like, they announced this 2023 in summer, even though it's been in development for a long time. I don't think it's going to be a long development cycle because the rumors are that this was supposed to ship last year. That's why it's running the M2 and not the M3. Like, there is a pipeline for them to do software updates, but it feels like this first year is software updates and, getting an ecosystem ready, figuring out what people are actually going to do with it. And they probably have spec'd out what a version 2 and maybe what even a lower budget version is like. But to burn these early adopters by releasing something, let's say the earliest summer of next year, to make it, a year and a half of value is, I think, really hard to see. I think.
What's the Quest cadence is like 2.5 or 3 years, right?
Quest 2 and 3 is three years for 2 and 3, but 1 and 2 was real fast. And
but it was real fast, like 2 years, real fast, not real fast, like 18 months.
Correct. It might be closer than 2 years. Yeah.
Anyway, did you feel like the M2 is fast enough? You mentioned that some of the windows felt framey.
I feel like the 16 gigs of RAM. I feel like M2 and the amount of RAM, I do reach its limits, and you can force quit. So even though it's running, something that's forked off of iPad OS or iOS, you can force quit applications by holding down the top 2 buttons, and you get a force close window that's very similar to your Mac OS force shutdown window. And I have to do that a couple of times when apps become unresponsive or buggy, when scrolling in a certain app becomes slow. It's happened.
For full disclosure, I was able to grab like 2 Safari windows, one with each hand, and scroll them up and down as fast as I wanted by moving my arms like a kind of like a angry toddler. So, and that worked. I was really surprised. That you couldn't do that on iOS.
Yeah. This is one of the big advantages they have, not only like an incredible hardware engineering team and, supply chain but they have the silicon, right? The decade long investment they've made into their fork of ARM has made it so power efficient and so powerful that the graphics on fully rendered scenes, like the dinosaur scene, it looks like PCVR graphics. It's like far and away superior. Like, this is the difference between a Switch and a PS5 in terms of fidelity.
Well, and the nice thing about it is because they're shipping this M2 version and these are all distinct experiences from PC VR stuff, the min spec isn't Oculus launched VR, which is what most VR developers are still working towards in a lot of cases, like 1080 era graphics. You're actually like, they've kind of raised the bar for this new platform, which is the min spec platform.
Yeah, and if people forget, they did announce that partnership with Unity. So hopefully there are developers maybe targeting some actually interesting, more elaborate games here.
I heard it's expensive though. I think to work in spatial for Unity, it's like $2,800. So it's a huge barrier to entry. I think they still really want to push people to code natively.
Yeah. Okay. I think that's it. One last thing. Can we talk about the FaceTime nightmare, Norm? I know we're over time.
Sure. Personas, right? So you scan your face and there's a lot of philosophical questions about this, like identity and what it means to have an avatar that's tied to yourself, but not like there's no biometric keying to it. Like, if I decide to create a persona, but then take off the headset and give it to someone else to scan, I would have their face for FaceTime calls because there's no outside biometric sensor that confirms that.
Kind of though, because it looks like it's just taking video or interpolating video from your eye movement and your mouth movement. Like the mouths just look like video. It looks like the old Conan O'Brien bit where he puts the mouth on the.
It's fully rigged. No, they're fully rigged models. Yeah, fully rigged. Yep.
But like you can stick your tongue out and go do all sorts of crazy stuff with your mouth and it works.
Everyone has the same tongue, and those crazy things are actually rigged. It's a model. It's not a video.
I had no idea. I assumed it was just taking video and mapping it onto a 3D surface.
It's mapping textures, but there is actual shape to it. And that's the impressive part about it. And they're making people like, you can't save your persona. You can't say, go back to what I would look like 6 months ago.
That sucks.
They are forcing people to update personas with every, patch and every version. So this is their way of just kind of locking you into as accurate of a representation of yourself as possible.
But also, okay, so the process must be a little fiddly though, because I'm not going to name any names here, but we have 3 friends. I have 3 friends that have the headset. I've gotten on calls with all of them. Some people have had, let's say, dramatically better results than others. Yeah. Some people have been firmly in the middle. Yours, I think, was the best of them. The most accurate representation. Still has a little bit of a uncanny valley. Yours was a little bit creepy, whereas the other ones looked like embalmed cadavers in cases, which is not what you're going for. Is the process fiddly? Is that what it is? Or is it it has a hard time with different people's faces?
I think hard time with different people's faces, and lighting matters a lot. You can't be super harsh lighting. People are encouraged to try and go through the process over and over again to find the best version of themselves. It's asking for like some basic stuff like move your eyebrows up and down, smile with teeth. And it's trying to make that process not super laborious because it's generating a pretty convincing model, I think, in a really short period of time. And it's like it's supposed to get better. Even the version 1.1, what people have shared pictures of their personas versus on launch day looks much sharper and more representative of what they actually look like.
It's unfortunate they don't let you at least switch back to the last one so you can see, because like judging by what's happened with friends, some of them have gotten worse and some of them have gotten better as they've tried it again. And it's unfortunate. It reduces my willingness to take a risk and try a new one. If I have one that's pretty good, then I could go back to like one of them, somebody's face was on a little bit crooked, like the mouth and the eyes were on like, it was like a 10-degree angle. So they looked kind of like a Charlie Kirk meme or something. It was bad. That's it.
And there's no customization. Yeah. I mean, like the only thing you can customize is the glasses because you don't scan with glasses. And that's the only thing that you would choose as an accessory, a selection of, like 15 or so glasses, but you don't choose hair. It's not avatar creation in an RPG. It's not like choose your ideal self. It's just, this is what you look like.
How does it handle beards? Have you seen anybody who has a beard with the video? I haven't seen anybody yet. I don't think.
Adam has a beard and his look, I mean, it captures the beard. Just like hair.
Really light though. Yeah.
I saw a still frame of somebody with a very large beard today and like visually it looked fine. I don't know how it moves since this was not
There's
video,
no movement on hair, no movement on beard.
Yeah, no. I assume but it's not like a Wii avatar beard or something like that where it's like a 3D model that has like hair texture on it or something nightmarish.
This looked like a photo of the person's beard.
Okay. I mean, call me cautiously optimistic. Norm, thank you so much for coming by, and we really appreciate you taking the time to go through the Vision Pro with us.
Yeah,
you're gonna have a video on Tested soon that people should go watch. I hope.
Hopefully next week. I just gotta go get down all my thoughts and film it.
Thanks, Norm, for coming by. As always, you can find Norm over on YouTube at the Tested channel or at tested.com on the World Wide Web, if Apple hasn't killed that yet.
Give it time.
And you should make sure tomorrow, if you're listening to this today, it comes out or next week, this week, next week. What week is it?
This coming week, perhaps in the days ahead.
We have it on good information that he will have a full tested review of the Apple Vision Pro, which everybody should check out, because I think I've watched a lot of Apple Vision Pro reviews and none of them are as thorough and comprehensive as what Norm is doing over at Tested on the Reg. So that'll do it, I guess, for us this week. Brad, we have some housekeeping first.
Do we?
Well, we've been doing reading, both of us.
Yes.
The Tech Pod book club is back in effect. This time you said, hey, this last summer, I think you said, hey, I've read this John Romero book. It's really good. You should read it. And I said, sure, I'll put it on my pile. And then it finally came up on the pile the other day. And you know what?
Yes.
It's really good.
Yes. It sounds like you're quite into it.
I've been up too late 2 or 3 nights in a row now because of the level of good that it is.
Yes.
And
like it's good from the start, but especially if you're nerds of a certain vintage like we are, There was a point in that book where you start getting into the software territory where like I couldn't do anything but read that book until I finished it.
If you ever had a notifier set up for plan files, this may be a book you're interested in. It is not at all what I was expecting. I'm just at the SoftBank period when they were making soft disk period rather. SoftBank is a completely different thing. Soft disk where they were making shareware, basically discs. So
they had to make a game a month. That was their job. When they worked at Soft Disk, they literally made a game a month.
But this is, so when you think about it, when you say it today, it sounds crazy. But when you think about what games were back then, it's not that out of control, right?
No, definitely not.
Also, they were just like absolutely horrific about ripping off other stuff that they liked at that period is the other thing that's become clear. So anyway, I've enjoyed it so far. We're going to read it. I think next week's episode, if I power through this as fast as I think I'm going to, then our plan is to talk about this book next week. So if you would like to read the book, you can pick it up. It's available wherever books are sold. Get it at your library, whatever. It's called Doom Guy: Life in First Person by John Romero. Highly, highly recommended. And I hope everybody enjoys it. And we will talk about it next week. But before we get to that, you know what time it is.
I do know what time it is. It's my favorite part of the show.
We have to thank the listeners.
Thank you, listeners.
Thank you, listeners. As always, Brad and Will Made a Tech Pod is a 100% listener-supported podcast. Without you all, we would not be here. So if you would like to help support the show, if you would like to be a part of the fabulous Tech Pod community over on Discord, you can go to patreon.com/techpod. Again, that's patreon.com/techpod, where for as little as $5 a month, you gain access to the Discord. You get access to the patron exclusive episodes where we talk about, well, like the stuff that we don't talk about on this show. I assume we're going to get real into dip recipes this month.
That's right. We get a little loose on the patron episode.
Yeah. Like if we were cocktail drinking people, there'd be cocktails.
Yeah. Oh, that's an interesting idea.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I do have a bottle of gin in there. Anyway. Yeah, so please go to patreon.com/techpod. Check it out. See if you want to support the show. And you can help keep the Tech Pod going. But every month, we like to thank all of our listeners. But of course, we also like to thank our executive producer tier patrons, including Paddle Creek Games, makers of Fractured Veil, Andrew Slotsky, Jordan Lippett, Bunny Fiend, Just Wedge, Joel Krauska, Twinkle Twinkie, David Allen, James Kamek, and Pantheon, makers of the HS3 high-speed 3D printer. Thank you all for your support. We appreciate you all.
Yes, we do.
And that'll do it for us this week. Another note, I guess I should say this here, promoted here, but if you want more technology from one of us, I'm on the PC World podcast most weeks these days.
Oh, I did not know that.
Yeah, I'm on the Full Nerd. I'm doing some contract work and doing some video stuff to help them out while Gordon's out sick. And have had a big planning meeting with friend of the show, Adam Patrick Murray, last week, and we're going to start earnest production next week. So if you want to do that, they're on YouTube. You can find it. I think they're also where all podcasts are found on the Apple Podcasts and similar type of platforms. So
yes, very cool.
If you want more Will in your ears, that's a place to get it. Anyway, we will see you all next week. Thanks for listening, everybody, and we hope you have a lovely, lovely week. Bye.